I'm Dennis House, and welcome to Camera Time. So why are we doing this? Because we're all on camera these days. The pandemic has made us this way. You have to Zoom. You have to do some presentations in front of a camera. You're even FaceTiming relatives you haven't seen in a long, long time. So I am here to help you. And I'm looking to the right a little bit just to admit some people in here. It's all going really well. But we have some people I'm just going to admit. So if I look to the right, that's exactly what I am doing. So first of all, thanks for being here with us today. I'm really honored to be able to help you guys and ladies do all sorts of great things with your home computers, your phones, your iPads, because you're going to transmit yourself all over the world in some cases. So let me tell you a little bit about my story. I'm the chief political anchor for WTNH, Channel 8, the ABC station here in Connecticut. I have about 30 years experience in the business. I started off as an intern, like many people in this business, in Rhode Island. And then I went to New Hampshire, worked behind the scenes, and then I became an anchor in Illinois, Michigan, and then Connecticut. I have covered all sorts of news stories over the years, from the O.J. Simpson trial. I can ask you just all to mute yourselves. Let me say, I'm going to ask our IT guy, Eric, how to mute everybody for now. Sorry. That's okay. Mute all. I just found it. Okay. So I'm just muting you for right now, but I will ask you to raise your hand and ask questions as we go forward, and I will call on you. So back to my history. So I was in Illinois, Michigan, and then Connecticut. I've covered all sorts of stories, from the O.J. Simpson trial to wildfires in Florida to the death of Pope John Paul II to 9/11. To a World Series, to the UConn Final Four, National Championship. I've covered sports. I've covered weather. I've been in blizzards. I've been in fires. I've been in floods. So I've done it all over the years, all in front of a camera. What's different about my career now is now I do it from sometimes a phone. Sometimes we're doing news from a phone, and I've actually done that. I do Facebook Lives from a phone. I do sometimes live reports from a phone. I sometimes get video for breaking news stories on a phone. I carry 2 phones. There are people who carry more, but that's what we have to do in order to cover news in today's day and age. And I've had to do some Zoom interviews, right like this. I've sat in front of a computer. So the first thing we're going to talk about is maybe your setup at home. I know a lot of people are wondering, like, well, what should I do for a setup at home? I'm going to tell you. So I am here in a classroom, and if you'll notice, the first thing you're going to notice is that I'm looking right at the camera. How many people, and I'm going to look around, have the camera below their noses? That's a no-no. So one of the things to make yourself look as good as you can, and you want to look good for your Zoom or your FaceTime or your presentation, whatever it is. So right now you can't see this, but this particular camera is sitting on top of a Tupperware box, and it's made to be my level. If you notice, this classroom is set up so that the computers are a little bit lower. Students are in this class, they're a little bit lower. You can see this one is facing in a different way, but that's how we set it up so that you look the best you look. We call it Nostril Cam. And here's a good test. You want to see if I'm right? Take your cell phone and take 3 selfies. One looking straight at it, the next one above, and the next one down below. And you tell me which one looks best. And I'm going to be honest with you. If you shoot it from down below, you're going to see into your nostrils. There's going to be people who say you have that extra chin or a little bit of bagginess under your chin. Even if you don't have it, you're going to look like you have it because you're shooting from below. So one of the first things you want to do at home is, you don't have to do it right now while we're watching this, but if you're setting up a home setup, that's the best way to do it. Make sure that you have a setup that makes you look good. Because, and it's not vain to say, I want to look good on a camera, because you want to look great for your presentation. You want to look great in front of your boss. You want to look great in front of your employees if you're giving a presentation. You want to look great in front of your students if you're teaching a class. So that's the first thing about the level of where the camera should be. It doesn't have to be an expensive camera. Some laptops, obviously, will have a higher quality, but if you have an old laptop, that's fine. If it works on your desktop, that's fine too. If you want to use your phone, just make sure that it's also very annoying. And sometimes you don't have a choice. If you're outside and the camera will move because you're walking with it, that's totally fine too. So that's the first thing, the setup. Next thing is your background. And I'm going to look around here, and there are some people who have some great backgrounds. And you know, listen, we have a home, we have to deal with our house, and that's the way it is. But sometimes you don't have a lot of choices. You want to make sure that your background is in a place that is not distracting people from your message. Now, so what I mean by that is, if you have like a picture of someone in a bikini on a shelf behind you, somebody might be looking at that, trying to figure out what that is. Writing behind you, people might try to read it. So what is that? They might be more focused on what's on your bookshelf than what is on what's coming out of your mouth and what you're saying. If you really wanted to really invest in a home studio, I would recommend a color that looks great on camera. Most television news studios, they use, just admit a few more people. I'm sorry, a bunch more people too. I will admit them, admit all. There we go. Sorry about that. You're all here. Admitting everybody. Okay. Most television news stations and studios use blue. Blue apparently is a great background, and the brighter the blue, the better. It seems to really pop against people's skin. You don't see it too much in television stations, but pink is another color that I'm told really makes your skin look great. So for those backdrops, just something to think about. If you're investing in a home studio, that might be something to think about. Paint the wall a different color or something like that. And put some nice things behind you. If you want to come, if you're a CEO and you're working from home and you don't want to be doing it from your kitchen with everything behind you, you might want to have something a little bit more professional. So look around your house. It doesn't have to be a big plot of real estate. In my home office, that is, I have 2 kids, we have 2 cats. The place is crazy. I have a wife who works. So, I mean, our house is noisy. So what I've tried to do when I do Zooms at home is we're in the corner, we're in the office, and I use a corner behind me. Why are corners good? Well, nobody can walk behind you, number one. And there have been some embarrassing Zooms from some people. There was a woman, she's a meteorologist, and she was doing the weather from her home, and her dad, she lived with her parents, her dad came down with his shirt off, scratching his stomach down the stairs behind her. And so these things happen. There was another woman who was doing and this is another thing, think about where you're doing your live things from. There was and you can Google all these stories if you want. There was an anchor, I believe she was in Sacramento, California, and she was doing a segment on makeup, and she did it in her bathroom. And her husband walked into the shower naked behind her. So you really have to be careful of these things. These things can happen. If you have a dog that's kind of noisy, well, you don't want to leave your door open. There have been some funny things happening. And with Zoom, this is a whole new experience for most of us. So as you set up your home office to do these lectures or interviews or whatever you're doing, think about it. Think about the backdrop. Think about what you want it to look like. Another thing I will recommend is lighting. You don't want to have a window behind you because it can kind of blot out your shot. It can make you look bad. So you might want to look into something like that. You might want to move it away from the window. You're better off having some light on your face than light behind you because it's just not going to look good. I don't really see, let's see. So Laura, you have a little bit of a window behind you. That's not too bad. But if you look at your shot, you see only half your face is being lighted. So that can kind of happen sometimes. It's not a huge thing, but it can happen. So you want to make sure that that you're lighted properly. I want to show you what I brought with me, and this is what I use sometimes. This is a ring light, okay? And it lights up, and you can put it behind your computer. I don't need one here because this room is fairly well lighted, but they're very inexpensive. This is a different one. This comes on a tripod, and it's great for, this is great for, just put it over here so I can show it to you in front of the camera, for phones, because the phone can be inserted right in here, and you can talk into it, and you have your light on. They call it a ring light because it puts a nice glow around your face. They're not that expensive. I've seen them at Marshall's. So So we know it can't be too much money, but yeah. So they come in all shapes and sizes and things like that. You don't need to spend a lot of money on it. They're very inexpensive. They sell them at Staples. And as I said, Marshalls, I've been seeing them lately for some reason. So maybe because the pandemic is coming over and people aren't buying them as much. There are some people who buy microphones because it helps your voice. Now, it all depends where you're doing it. If you're in a busy house, maybe a microphone might be good. And you can get some that clip right onto your jacket or your sweater, or you can get one of those, they look the old microphones from the 1950s and 60s, and you can get one of those and your voice will be more concentrated in that. So it's not a bad thing, to have, not necessary, but if you want to have one, don't spend too much money on it. I think I did at one point. We don't even really use it. If anyone, let's see. So anyone have any questions as we move along? Feel free to raise your hand and I will, is anyone else in the waiting room? If you have a question, feel free to ask. Let's see. I don't have a ton of, we got a chat here. So maybe someone does have a question. Let's see what that says. What about near a window at night? That's okay, depending on what it is. You might get a reflection of your interior lights on the light. So let's say a lamp is reflecting. So you might want to do a test shot. It never hurts to do a test shot before you go on the air, so to speak, because you want to look your best and you want everything to look your best, particularly if you are making the presentation, or if, let's say it's a job interview. You don't want anything to distract from, if your boss is hiring you and you're in front of an unmade bed, that might send a message. This guy's maybe sloppy. It's 3 PM. He hasn't made his bed. There's an empty light beer can next to it. Look at your background, because these things are important. You want to make sure that you're making the best impression of you, because you're your brand. Everyone here is a brand. Whether you're selling yourself to your kids or to your company or to your school, you are the brand, and you want to make sure that your brand looks the best as it possibly can. So let's talk about appearance a little bit. So listen, it used to be that we were, when I started in television 30 years ago, that we all had a look-alike. Obviously, wear the same color suits, and women had to have the same bob haircut, and they had to wear all the same pantsuits. It's different now. Television is much more diverse. And I'm not just talking about racially diverse. It's also diverse in terms of appearances. It used to be facial hair was a no-no. News directors would tell you, no, you cannot grow a beard. No, you cannot have this. You cannot grow a mustache. Mustaches were particularly bad among researchers because if you look at the famous people in history who had mustaches, Saddam Hussein and Adolf Hitler and Fidel Castro, they looked at these people like, this is what researchers said that people would see in a news anchor. So news anchors were told not to do those things. It's a lot different now. You'll see people with longer hair. You'll see people not wearing ties. You'll see women wearing sleeveless dresses. All these things used to be outlawed by news directors and by consultants. So it's definitely changing. In terms of appearance, you want to make sure that the number one thing is you want to be genuine. You want to be yourself. You want to be authentic. But at the same token, you also want to make a nice impression. And it all depends on who your audience is. If you're interviewing for a job where you wear a t-shirt all the time, I always believe you should dress a little bit better than the job you're pursuing. So if you want to dress up for that interview, fine. I recently had a question from a friend who had bought a special t-shirt to wear on a Zoom presentation. And some cameras, they reverse the look, right? But some phones do that. So you don't want anyone trying to read something backwards on your shirt. So if it's not going to work for you, Zoom, don't do it because it's only going to distract. So you want to make sure that you wear something that is, again, does not distract from your message unless the message is what you're wearing. Graphics are also a great way to engage people during your presentation. And there's an easy way to do it. I didn't make any for you tonight because I just wanted to talk, but and I wanted to take a lot of your questions, but we got some more people to admit. Hold on. I'm sorry about that, guys and ladies. All right. welcome to our new people here. Sorry about that. I didn't see you in the waiting room. Hopefully it wasn't too long. We're talking about graphics in your presentations, and you can do that as well. You can make some graphics. You can find some off online. Make sure that it's not something copyrighted unless you make sure you credit that person. Another thing too, and I don't like to, in my own presentations, I don't like to drone on too long. So right now I've been talking for about 17 minutes, so I'm going to take some questions pretty soon. So you want to engage people through your conversation. I think it's in many ways, it's tough for people to follow someone on Zoom for a long period of time, and we've all done it. You turn your video off, your sound off, and you go get a bite to eat or something like that if the speech is going on too long. So if you want to really engage your audience, then take questions from them. And that's what I'm going to do right now before we go any further. So I am going to unmute everybody, and we're going to, let's see, now how to mute people. Let's see, mute all, mute, let's see, continue. Bottom right, let's see, to unmute. Let's see, oh, here we go, hold on. Let's see. Oh, ask all to unmute. Okay. I guess. Is everybody unmuted here? Jordan, say something. I think you're unmuted. Everyone's unmuted, right?
Yep.
Okay. So if you want to ask a question, you need to unmute yourself, because I can't unmute you if you've already muted yourself. So anyone have a question?
Dennis, this is Paul. I had a question. I put it in the chat.
Sure.
What about my, I have eyeglasses and I can see now, maybe because it's at night, but there's a reflection and I don't, do you ever have that happen? Or?
I do have that because I have, so I wear reading glasses to you to read the tiny print. I don't need them to talk with you, but I do have them on, periodically. And so you do want to, if you can get glasses that are non-reflective, I think it depends on how you're doing it.
How to be in the front of the camera.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in front of the camera, you,
Okay.
On a regular basis, you may want to invest in some glasses that are non-reflective. But like right now, I'm looking at yours. I do see a little bit of reflection. It's not a bad, no, it's not a bad reflection. Some people do have some pretty bad reflections, but yours is not.
Great.
All right, who else has a question? Do I have to call on people? I could call on people. We're going to do a poll here.
I have a question.
Okay, Lauren.
What about these Zoom backgrounds? There's so many different kinds of Zoom backgrounds. Is it good to have one, or so you don't have to worry about what's in your room?
Well, listen, if you have to worry about what's in your background, and sometimes you don't have a choice. If you live in a small apartment and you got to do what you got to do, then a Zoom background is okay. I'm not a fan of them because the technology, unless you have like a great computer and a green screen at home, they're just not going to look good. Your hair gets cut off, you move, you look funny, your mouth looks funny. So I'm not a fan of the Zoom backgrounds. However, having said that, there are some people who like them because they're not distracting. There are some companies that say, listen, please put up so that everyone looks uniform and the whole bit. So it's one of those things that it's kind of your own call. Excuse me. Again, not a fan, but I don't think that it's a terrible thing to do. But I just don't think the quality is there for so many people. Oh, we'll get someone else.
I have a question.
Yes, ask away.
What are some of the things that you learned as an anchor to gain trust of the audience, and how can that be translated on a Zoom call or an interview?
Well, I think, to gain the trust of an audience sometimes can take a long time, particularly for news anchors. But what you want to do for your own, it's Sylvia, right? Sylvia, excuse me one second. You want to be authentic. You want to be you. You want to tell the truth. You want to be honest. I think one way that, and I'm usually asking the questions, but politicians are the ones who ask the questions, and sometimes they don't get politicians and journalists rank very low in terms of the trustworthy scale out there in polls. And I don't think it's fair, because I'd like to believe that I'm a trusted journalist. I like to believe that I've always told the truth to our viewers and reported accurate information. But sometimes, you'll get a politician on there and you'll ask this politician a question and they'll say something, but it wasn't an answer to your question. And then you ask it a second time. And so that sometimes can lead to distrust among viewers. But in your own case, you want to make sure that, like, I mean, Sylvia, if you were saying, oh man, I just love being here. I'm at the ocean right now, and I'm on a beachfront property, and maybe you are, but right now you look like you're in a living room. And so there are going to be people who are like, well, why is she talking like that if we don't see it? So in your own particular presentation, whatever it may be, just be yourself, be honest, be genuine. And as I said, I think we live in a very individualistic era right now where it's okay to be different. It's okay to be yourself. It's okay to, I was thinking about this yesterday. I've just noticed a lot of people, maybe it's the pandemic, and my daughter did it when she was younger, but I've noticed a lot of people dyeing their hair bright colors, or like putting streaks of, incredible people, business people. It's not Rosa DeLauro, Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro. I interviewed her last week. She's got purple streaks in her hair, and that's her. So I think it's okay to be yourself. I think that's the number one key, number one element to being trusted, is to being yourself and to being honest and being genuine.
Thank you.
Who's next? Any questions here? Hold on. Can I ask you questions? I just want to know, like, how many people do we have here who are students? Okay, Jordan, where do you go to school? Unmute yourself, Jordan.
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to figure out how to do that. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
I go to Western Connecticut State University, which is in Danbury.
Excellent, excellent. And what are you majoring in?
I'm majoring in meteorology, and specifically I want to go into broadcast meteorology.
Perfect, perfect. Excellent, good school for that. Just with a quick show of hands, how many people are here just because they want to improve their Zoom presentations? Okay, so a lot of people do Zoom. Is there anyone here who's never done a Zoom? Okay, it's interesting because, my mom, who is going to be 80, although we had to talk about this because she's turning 80 in a couple of months, and she said there's to be no mention of the fact that I'm 80. I said, okay, I'll just say you're going to be 70. But she does Zooms for business. And so it's just the way of the future. And so many people, I don't have any research on this, but my guess is that attendance at meetings and board meetings is a little bit higher now because of Zoom, because it's difficult to make some meetings. I'm on a bunch of boards, and I'll tell you, sometimes I'm scurrying across town to make one and be at another. And so, I have to miss some of these. Now that I'm doing a Zoom meetings, it does make things a lot easier. I still miss the in-person ability to sit across from someone and interview someone, but Zoom is pretty good for what it is. And that is a way that we've been able to continue communicating and interacting with people during this pandemic where we're not allowed to see people on camera. How many people are in business and are here tonight because they want to improve their business performance? Anybody? Okay, Michelle, welcome. If you could just unmute yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself, if you'd like to. Michelle, welcome.
Well, I wasn't expecting to talk. Hi.
Well, this is great. This is good. I'm here to help you talk.
Yes,
and,
thank you.
You seem extremely comfortable. So let's all look at Michelle for a second. She's extremely comfortable. She's smiling. She doesn't look nervous. I think that's the number one thing about being on camera, whatever it may be. You've got a nice backdrop. It's not distracting. People can focus on your message, whatever it may be. And do you do a lot of Zooms?
I do a lot of teaching with Zoom.
Okay. So you're young kids or older kids?
Actually, all age ranges from about 20 to 60.
Oh, good. Okay. So because I know, like, my kids are on Zoom at age 11 and 14, and they're poor teachers, I tell you, it's going to be tough. But how do you find teaching via Zoom?
You know what? My teaching isn't traditional education. It's my specialty is bodybuilding. So I teach competitors how to stand out on stage.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Right. So I actually find that Zoom is really great, which I did before the pandemic for people that are not local, because when you're on stage, you have to listen for a head judge for cues.
Okay.
for them to have me in their ear across the country is actually a benefit for them because they have to follow instructions. They learn to listen. And,
Yeah,
and it teaches me how to get somebody to do what I need them to do. I have to, obviously, it's not as easy to do in person versus over online. So it's actually helped me to become a better teacher.
Interesting. Yeah, there are some benefits, I think, that we're learning about ourselves and our ability to do our jobs by being in front of a camera. And, obviously, I've done it for a long time. So it's a little bit different for me. It's a little bit different of a camera situation. But, I've been interviewing people for 30 years. So to interview them this way, it's a little bit, I don't know. It was a new challenge, but now I'm kind of used to it. But I do prefer to do it in person. I want to ask Luke a question because he's a reporter. And I know, Luke, obviously you're reporting during the pandemic. You've had to interview some people via Zoom. What's the most challenging thing about that?
Most challenging thing, getting the Zoom interviewee to adjust their camera properly, believe it or not. We have a lot of people who like to talk about the beginning or at all different angles, especially bringing in lower thirds and whatnot, will cut off their faces sometimes. And it looks embarrassing for us when we put it on air, when in actuality, I think it's important to have the conversation at the beginning of, hey, can you adjust your camera a little bit? So that way.
Absolutely. Lower thirds, by the way, Luke is referring to are the graphics they put at the bottom of the screen. Like, for instance, it would be in front of your name. And so that also changes the framing of your shot, because you need to make sure that it's high enough so that the lower third doesn't cut off that person's face. So I always think that a good way to frame people, and we're pretty much all doing this, you don't want to be too close, you don't want to be too far away. So if you can see like an upper body shot, sometimes being too close to someone is really uncomfortable. And obviously Zoom, we're not invading people's personal space, but if you're too close, it can definitely be, it can definitely, make the conversation awkward. By the way, these are essentially what we're doing right now is a selfie. We've set up a camera so that we can have, we're not seeing ourselves, but it's essentially a selfie in many ways. I'm not a fan of selfies, by the way, to take pictures. A lot of people take them like this. I don't have particularly long arms, so this is about as far away as I can get. I'm going to show you. And in many cases, selfies are not flattering. Some people take great selfies. There's a belief out there that, of course, if you're young, you don't have any wrinkles or any blemishes, that you can take a selfie anywhere and you're going to look great. And as you get a little bit older, people become a little bit more self-conscious of selfies. To me, I think you're better off handing your camera to someone and taking a better picture. And I know some people who just won't even take a selfie because sometimes they look absolutely terrible. And listen, our family, our friends, we don't really care what they look like and the whole bit. And if you're doing a FaceTime, maybe you can look sloppy, or maybe you can shoot it sideways or whatever. But when you're on camera for your job, you want to look as good as you can. And so this particular camera I have here tilts, and let me show you the difference in tilting. So that can tilt a little bit. Well, anyway, see how all of a sudden you see the ceiling? Ceilings aren't great. Now it's hard to avoid the ceiling here because it's such a big, long classroom. But if you're in a tiny room and you're seeing ceiling lights, well, it's a little bit, that would be a little bit better shot. And there it goes. Oops. Now I've messed it all up. But anyway, so these are some of the tricks you want to learn at home. You might want to lower your chair. You might want to put your computer up on something, raise as high as you can. Most of the people here have it looking pretty good. How many people are looking down at their computer? Raise your hand. Okay, most of you are looking straight at it. So, that's one of the key things as you make your presentation. Make sure that you're not, again, looking down at your camera. Nostril Cam. Remember, Nostril Cam is a bad thing. You do not want to do any Nostril Cam. All right, before we move on, any questions for anybody?
Yeah, Dennis, this is Paul.
Hey, Paul.
I just took 2 of your points. I put my laptop on top of a box, and now I can sit back, and I think I frame better in my Zoom because of those.
You do look much better. How about? Good for you, Paul. We're helping people. Yeah, raising things up a little bit. And, and again, there's some people who probably, if you're 22 years old, you probably don't care because you probably look great from any angle. As anyone who's 40 or 50 is probably going to say, yeah. But it's a little bit different. And again, too, and I don't want to get into this whole thing, but, there are some people who are going to say that, ageism is certainly out there in the job field. And there's so many people I know who are looking for jobs right now. Like, oh, I'm over 50. It's really hard. I got laid off during the pandemic. And so obviously, you want to look as good and young as you possibly can. And so harsh lighting is going to make you look older. So why would you do that at a job interview, right? So you want to, perhaps invest in one of those ring lights or something that's going to make you look, 10 years younger rather than 10 years older. And it's a real thing. There are some people out there who are working for companies right now who've been brought in to help CEOs do a better job with their, even public, public presentation. I want to put a poll out there, and where is it here? Let me put my poll out there. There it is, and we're gonna launch the poll, and so it's out there. So just answer that if you can, and let's see. We'll take a quick poll. We'll see how that your on-camera history. So.
Dennis?
Yes, I think she just, yes.
Dennis, this is Janet House. What if you did both?
Hi, Janet.
I've interviewed people on camera and I've been interviewed, so.
Okay. I should have put both as an answer. I'm sorry.
Okay. No, that's okay.
I did this poll, and we've got 17 people who voted. Just waiting for a few more if we can, and let's see if we can get some more in here. 19 of 22 have voted. 3 more people. We're just going to wait for 3 more people to vote if we can, and let me know what you think. But 60% of the people have been interviewed. 20% of, so only 4 people have never been in an interview on camera. So, Lori, I don't know what you did, but all of a sudden your camera looks much better. What did you do? What kind of changes did you make?
I'm holding it by my hand because I'm like sitting
okay.
With my dogs, so I'm just kind of adjusting when I'm holding it.
Well, you look great. I think maybe it was the window.
Could be.
So let me go around and give people just a couple little tips on things they might be able.
Ask a question?
Yes, ask a question, Lori.
I'm on my local board of education, and so we've been doing a lot of our meetings by Zoom. And I get frustrated sometimes because it's so hard when you're talking, you want to look at the person, but then your eyes don't go to the camera. So then you look like you're looking off and you're really not. I mean, do you have any tricks as to how to keep your focus on the, like looking straight ahead and not looking at the person you're talking to?
So right now I'm looking at the camera and I'm not looking at you because I have 2 setups here. I've got the camera here and I've got the monitor where I can see the Zoom right here. President Rona Free is joining us of the USJ. Thank you so much, President Free, for being here with us here. So the question was, in case you didn't hear it, was how do you focus on the person you are talking to when the camera may be in a different angle? And this happens a lot. In fact, with cell phones, when you take a selfie or someone's taking your picture, as the camera, sometimes you're looking off to the right. So you want to make sure you're actually looking at the lens. In this particular case, again, I have 2 setups. So to look at you right now, I have to look off camera at the laptop that has everything set up. To look at you, for you to see me looking at you, I have to look straight at the camera. So that's really the only advice I have, is that you want to, sometimes you can't look right at the person because you will be looking off. And I think people are pretty forgiving about what's going on. They know it's a Zoom. They know it's, they know something is up. They know you're not necessarily looking at the wrong person. You're just looking at your camera. And I could have easily, maybe I don't have a shelf to put it, but if I move the camera, you would see there's nothing to put it above this particular laptop, but I could have done that, as well. If you don't mind, I wanted to just go around and talk about some of the backgrounds. Let's talk about backgrounds for just a moment. All right. So Kim Beckus, where are you from? Where are you in right now? Is that so to me, it looks like a kitchen, maybe?
This is my office.
Behind you? Oh, that's your office. Okay. That's your office. Okay. So your camera looks a little fuzzy to me, and it's possible it might be the lighting. I'm not sure. You've got two overhead lights behind you that might be sort of casting a weird light, maybe reflecting on the camera of the computer. I'm not certain of that, but that's possible. Way in the back, the lights way behind you.
So I know those lights are a challenge for me. And so during the day when I Zoom, I just go with natural light. I do have a window beside me here, and that works pretty well.
Oh, good.
Unfortunately, this is a big desktop. That's my most reliable machine. So at night, I've got those lights. They're all on one switch. I can't dim some, or so it's a challenge. So I'm interested in what the ring light might do in terms of being able to just go with the light and turn those off. That's something I'm going to look into. In terms of the fuzziness, Zoom does have a Facetune option that does soften all of us who are above a certain age.
Another.
So some of this is by design, I believe, that the harshness is a Zoom. It's a feature, not a bug. So
nothing wrong with that. It looks great, and it's interesting. We talk about these filters, and hey, listen, there's nothing really wrong with a filter, and there is belief out there that particularly among young kids and young women who look at Instagram and they see these people with flawless skin and not a blemish on it and just perfectly tanned skin and the whole bit. And nowadays you can pretty much get a filter to do anything. And so, but what's real and what's not? As I said, I encourage people to be authentic, but if you're going for that job, and if you're not a person who likes to comb his or her hair, but you're going for a job interview, well, maybe you can't be that authentic. You have to also kind of dress for the occasion a little bit. So if you're in a job interview or you're making a presentation, back to that whole thing, you want to look your best. So you want to kind of step it up just a little bit. So authentic to a degree. And Kim, you just mentioned those ring lights. For those of you who didn't, who joined later, didn't know, this is a ring light. And it lights up. This particular one, the cord just broke, so I can't really show you what it does, but this lights up. And you can buy it on Amazon. They sell them pretty much everywhere. They sell them in department stores now, like a Target. I think I mentioned to you, I was in the Wethersfield Marshalls the other day, and there were a whole bunch of them. So you can buy them, and they're pretty inexpensive. There are smaller ones that clip on top of your computer, but they do make a world of difference. And it's a soft lighting that makes you look really, really young. Let's go around and talk about some of these other backgrounds I'm seeing. So Luke, you're in front of a clock. That can be good and bad. People like to watch clocks, but they can also be distracting. Janet, you've got a nice setup, but you're not sitting in the middle of the camera. You're, we see, there you are. Now you're right in the middle. So that looks great. I just want to go around and give everyone a couple of pointers. Sylvia, yours looks great too. You're sitting on a couch. Jordan, you look great. Your camera could be a little bit higher or your chair a little bit lower. Jesse Imsey, where is he? Oh, Jesse, you look great. You very legal behind you, even though you're not a lawyer. And it's like that, we talked about this earlier in the program that sometimes if you have a lot of stuff behind you, people are going to want to see what it is. People are studying, like, what is it? Like, are those baseballs behind you on the top shelf? They are. They're baseballs. See, I'm interested in that. But if Jesse was doing a presentation, maybe that's too distracting for me. Paul, your background is fascinating. What is that big yellow thing behind you?
Yeah, that's a corporate background.
Oh, it's a corporate. So you're in a background right now.
Yes, yeah, that's a corporate one they provided on my Zoom.
You're doing a Zoom background. Okay, so I talked about this earlier that some Zoom backgrounds are great if you look better. It all really depends on what you're going to be doing there. Mike, your camera, are you on a cell phone or are you on a computer?
Cell phone.
Mike, you're on a cell phone. Okay, so I can tell you're holding it down low. Try holding it up just a little bit higher for just a second. Okay, a little bit higher. See, you come into more focus, and you look a little bit better. So sometimes, again, if the camera is here, if you can see me, if the camera's here, it's not going to look as good as if the camera's here. So, and I know it's difficult and it's hard to hold a camera. One nice thing about this particular ring light is it has a tripod. So you can put your camera right in, you can see it. And so if you were facing it, you don't have to worry about it. You can use your hands and things like that, particularly if you are doing a presentation. Who did I miss here for backgrounds? I want to go through everyone's background and see if I can help whoever needs help. But, there's already been some improvements in what we've been watching so far. So one thing I want to talk a little bit about is content. So let's say that you have a presentation and it needs to be 30 minutes, all right? So my view on presentations is you can write it out if you want. It really depends, but I like to do talking points instead. And I love to rehearse it in the car. I like to go through things in the car because I'm all by myself. There's no one bothering me, and I can sort of walk through what I want to talk about. But your talking points are like, for instance, tonight, when I started this, I had a list of some things that I wanted to cover, but I didn't write it all out. And if you have a long presentation, it's all written out, that's going to get a little tedious to read it because you're going to be looking down, blah, 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 blah. And so you don't want to write every single word out, but some talking points are good to keep you on track. You want to make sure that you make your points. I think a good way, I love to watch TED Talks. TED Talks they're short things. Sometimes they're 10 minutes. There was a TEDx, they called it, in Hartford in December. And one of my friends was in it, and he really worked really, really hard on his speech. He wrote it out, and then he memorized it, and he nailed it. He nailed it. So preparation is one of the best things for a presentation. If you want to ace your presentation, make sure you know the material cold. And if it all depends on the subject matter too. If you're an expert in something, it's very easy to talk about something. How many people here have had to do a presentation during the pandemic? So a lot of people. All right. Did you find it difficult in terms of doing it in front of a camera, maybe with no audience?
Hey, Dennis, this is Jesse.
Hey, Jesse. Hey, Jesse.
How's it going?
Good. How are you? Nice to see you here.
Good.
Jesse, by
Good to
the
see
way,
you.
is very involved in all sorts of things in the city of Hartford and the region, and is also a part-time professor at the University of Hartford. So we welcome you here.
The classroom suits you well, Dennis.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to be here.
I would say probably from the get-go during the pandemic, one of the most difficult things in presenting for me is that I really feed off of the audience and really like to be personable. So, picking out individuals or kind of seeing how people are reacting to you so you can adjust on the fly. That's taken a lot of practice to not get distracted by looking at all the little boxes of everybody looking at you from what you're trying to communicate. So, some of depending on the type of presentation, if you have an audience, something that I felt has been useful is, calling out people and including them also in the conversation and kind of creating that more interpersonal atmosphere instead of having it be so impersonal where you've got, all these screens in the way. So, that's probably been the biggest hurdle, but the biggest, adjustment I've had to make.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. I think that I like speaking in front of a group because you can actually engage people more. And, everyone's got a different style of public speaking. I've never been a fan of big, long speeches. It's just not me. I like to, maybe make my points and then throw it to the audience for questions. And then we can guide the conversation because there might be some people who, would like to ask me something about what I was talking about, but maybe drive it in a different direction. And I kind of like doing that. I also like, you listen, if, I'm not the most sought after public speaker, but if I'm there, I know that these people want something from me. And I also want something from them. I want them to enjoy this experience and I want them to be engaged. I want them to learn something, but I also want to learn something about them. I'm an interviewer by heart. And so right here, I know that we've asked pretty much everyone a question here. Is there anyone I missed? Who did I miss? Oh, Amanda Sirica is with us. Amanda, I missed you earlier. Let's talk about your background a little bit.
Hi, how are you?
It's nice to see you here. And
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm just so glad that you're here. So we talked earlier to pretty much everyone here about why they're here. What do you?
Well, I'm sorry if I was fashionably late. I was doing the soccer mom drill and I had you on my phone.
Listen, I've done that.
I'm a consultant, so I'm a multitasker and have an excellent work-life balance to be able to be all things to everyone. I'm a PR consultant. My marquee client is West Farms Mall. I've had them for 14 years. I do a lot of in-studio segments, so that's been very challenging during the pandemic because I like to bring products or apparel and models, and I've had to set that up in our conference room, which lacks luster and it's just awful. So it's definitely been a challenge to provide the same, you know, excitement in our natural surroundings and stores and shooting things, or coming in studio and setting up a tabletop of Mother's Day gifting items. It's just been pretty bad. And I feel like I look awful on these Zoom interviews that I've been doing.
Well, let me ask you this, Amanda. So you do the Zooms from where you are right now. This is your place?
No, I have done them from my home. It's not really conducive because my husband's working from home, the kids are online at home. So I've been going into West Farms to my conference room, and it's just a stale gray conference room. So
where are you right now? Are you at home now?
I'm in my dining room. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And is this where you do your Zooms from most of the time?
Well, for like meetings, yes.
Yeah. So
my husband's kicked me out of my office because now he's home.
Listen, I have a working wife too, and I have 2 kids who are remote schooling, so I get it. And it's interesting because, and this is a complete aside, but I was reading an article the other day how, in the last 5 years, everyone wanted a house with an open concept where they buy these old houses and they'd rip down walls so you could see from the kitchen all the way to the other room. Now they're like, we need walls, we need rooms. And so that now some of these older houses that have little rooms are actually really appealing to many people because she needs an office, he needs an office, the kids need to be here, and we just can't have people Zooming in the middle of the kitchen. So the only thing I don't like about your Zoom location is it looks like anyone could walk in from that hall to your left.
I wouldn't always be in here, but like for a client meeting, this is where I do it,
Okay.
I don't know. But
yeah, no, I mean, we talked about locations and it's not, everyone's house is different. It's and this great
pick a prettier spot.
Well, it's not that it's ugly. It's, it's just that hallways can be difficult because people can walk in. And we talked at the beginning of the program about someone whose dad walked in with his shirt off, and things can happen. And so it all depends what you're actually looking to do. If it's a really important meeting and maybe you're home by yourself and no one's coming home, then I guess you're going to be okay. But I remember once I was doing a Zoom with the West Hartford mayor, Sherry Cantor, and she was bothered by the fact that during the middle of it, someone was ringing her doorbell, and she didn't know why, her husband or whoever else was home didn't get the door. So these things do happen. And then she heard the door open eventually, and there was some chatting in the background. So these things do happen. Listen, it's home life, and to strike that balance is going to be difficult. But we did talk at the beginning of the program that if you can find a little quiet corner, it can be a corner. It doesn't have to be big. It can be very small. In fact, I know somebody turned a closet into a Zoom thing. It was a large closet, but they can close it. No one can walk in. The lighting's controlled, and that's how they do it. They bring their phone in there, they put it in a little tripod, and they're good. And they've kind of set it up. So studios don't have to be big. In fact, if you ever went to a TV station, you might be a little surprised at how they're built. Some of them are really small, and they're not made out of high grade materials necessarily. Sometimes they're plywood and they're fiberglass, or they're styrofoam, and they're painted, and hey, it looks great in front of a camera. So my advice to you, you're juggling kids, you got all sorts of stuff, so it's difficult to do it, and you're swinging a job too. So kudos to you for getting it all done.
Thank you. I have one quick question.
Sure.
So if I'm doing an interview and there's a split screen, the anchor, whoever's interviewing me, has all the amazing camera lighting and that beautiful lens that makes you look like a Hollywood star. And I've got my little Amazon light clipped on my computer that's shining on me, and it's just awful. What do you do when you're sitting at your location where you still look, you know, you don't look like the Walking Dead next to, you know, those people that are in the studio?
Well, you know, Amanda, you know, we have, you know, television stations have thousands of dollars worth of equipment, and they're lighted well. We have experts who come in and certain spot. You could probably figure out a place in your house that would be, you know, we mentioned colors for backdrops that really make you look nice. Blues are great. If you have a blue room, you might want to think about that. Aqua, pink is another good color that looks great against people's skin tones. But, you know, a little bit of makeup. I did want to talk about makeup a little bit because people have asked me about that. Now, I do wear makeup on television. I don't necessarily wear it for Zoom calls, depending if it's a board meeting, I'm not going to wear makeup. But if it was a presentation or a Zoom interview where that would end up on TV, I would wear some makeup. So I'm a guy, I don't really have a lot. I carry this little bag. I don't carry it everywhere, but I keep it at work. And it's probably, you know, I have a couple of extra makeups in there for a guest. If I had somebody to have one, I always keep like a new one on hand. But, you know, and then I got a brush, a comb, a mirror. You know, never hurts to have a mirror. And, you know, some Vaseline for your lips. Always make your lips look a little bit better, I'm told, on television. A little hairspray, a brush, some powder, and that's pretty much all I have. I do have, and I'm going to confess this to you, that I used to have a consultant at one point who didn't like my eyes. And she made me get an eyeline pencil to put underneath here. And I always hated doing it and never really did it. Well, you know, as you know, my dear friend, TV wife, Denise DeCenzo, died in December of 2019. And she was really into me making sure that I did what the consultant said. So the last gift she ever gave me was a little pencil, little eyeliner pencil. It was the brand that she thinks is the best, and it's in here. And it's down to this low. And I need to go out and buy one just because of her. I don't really use it, but so little things, listen, a little bit of makeup can go a long way. And even for men, I would recommend that if you have to do a televised presentation. In fact, I helped a friend of mine who works for a hedge fund, and he had to go in front of a camera, and it was going to be shipped out all over to the company. And he asked me about makeup, and I said, listen, you've got naturally shiny skin like I do, then you need to have a little bit of powder. And there are a couple ways to do it. You can go to, there's a place in West Farms, MAC Cosmetics, which you can go in there, and sure, it's embarrassing. You're in the middle of the mall, and you're like, they're rubbing stuff on you to pick your color. But once you do it once, they'll probably pick your skin tone. You never have to worry about it again. You can also go into Walgreens and just buy some powder as well. So that's my advice for you. But, you know, Amanda, just pick a place in your house. And for all of you, you know, pick a place in your house that looks good. You know, just work around that. We have one other Jason Sims, we'll call on you too, because we didn't call on you yet. If you could unmute yourself. And so your backdrop, let me get a closer look at your backdrop. So yours is good.
This is not my usual Zoom spot. I also was doing kid duty, and so I'm on my phone. I'm usually on a computer, and it looks a little different. So yeah,
totally fine. You know, we've had some real progress made here today by a lot of people who just changed a few things and really looked a lot better by just making a few quick adjustments. And listen, everyone's got something they've got to deal with at home. It's not like this is a perfect science. No one has a studio at home. But I will say, you know, some people have done a pretty good job. You know, obviously, Jordan, you're in television, so we know what you got a little bit of history with that. And, you know, Jesse, do you have a ring light?
Yeah, so I purchased a ring light, and I also have I have an external webcam, which I found to be incredibly useful because all of the computers that I've used that I have, you know, the cameras just aren't, you know, up to par. It's like a little too fuzzy, or it makes the lighting look really weird. So that was probably the best purchase I made during COVID.
So Amanda, one thing, you want to, we have those external webcams that we put on our computers at work. So when we do Zooms, that might give it a little bit better of a look. Now when you're interviewed by someone for television, you could be in your studio or you could be on one of these external webcams, but it's not a bad investment. If this is part of your life, part of your business, you can obviously, expense it or deduct it. Staples has a great selection of those, and you just snap them on top of your camera. I mean, you have to plug it in and all that, but that does help a little bit, give you a better look. I'm right now in front of a special camera here at USJ, University of St. Joseph, Polycom. I don't know anything about it, what it costs, but it's got speakers and everything, and it's pretty nice. And actually, I can probably show. No, I can't show it to you. But what I can do is I can take a picture of it and show it to you that way. But Polycom, just Google it and
got it. Thank you.
But that might be something. And Amanda, you missed us a little bit earlier.
Sorry.
The thing that I would recommend to you is raise the camera a little bit. Raise the camera, lower the chair, and see, that looks 100% better. It's okay to have a shadow on your neck. It's not okay to see your neck. That's my goal. And so I see a shadow and Sully, that's good. Luke, shadows on your neck are good because it means shooting down, and we all look a little bit better. All of our studio cameras are a little bit higher than we sit, just a little bit, not a lot. You don't want to be like looking down like it's a steep camera, but you do want to be a little bit higher. And I think pretty much everyone has learned that tonight. That's one of the key things. Any other questions before we wrap it up? I don't want to, there must be something.
Yeah, I got a question, Dennis. You talked about lower thirds a little bit. I've had some clients on TV interviews and it got cropped in a way I didn't expect. Like, maybe they look like me right now, but then somehow when the interview goes live, they're like way zoomed in and their head's cut off. And I'm just like, what happened? Like, how could I have anticipated that,
Well, one thing is if they put it in like a double box. What a double box means is, let's say we've got, like Jesse and Paul, and they're having a conversation. Sometimes they shrink it a little bit, but that much of a change really would surprise me. There shouldn't be that much of a difference. You might get chopped a little bit, but and for effects, for editing effects, like let's say we wanted to zoom in on you, we could. I don't know why you would do that. Again, I'm not a fan of like being really close to the camera. It just looks good. I think you're better off sitting just like this. I think this is how people want to see it. A little bit wider is okay for certain interviews and things like that. I want to also recognize President Rona Free, President of the University of St. Joseph, is here with us today. And I believe she's wearing are you wearing a USJ sweatshirt? You are. Yes, absolutely. And your camera is the right way. We've talked about how some people have the reverse cameras that they can't be switched. And so when you wear something with letters, it can come out reverse. And so I always tell people that make sure you check your camera because otherwise that can be pretty distracting for a lot of people. President Free, do you have any questions for us?
I do have a question. So I don't usually do calls from here, but wherever I am and wherever I'm doing a call, I have a terrible voice, and it's even worse on a Zoom, where I think people hear the voice more than they ordinarily would when they're in a bigger venue. So I'm wondering if you have any suggestions about that.
Well, I don't think you have a terrible voice, number one. Number two, I've interviewed you on a television set before for Face the State a couple years ago, and so I know what your voice sounds like. It does sound a little bit different on a computer, as we all do, because the quality isn't as good. So there are a couple of things you can do. Number one, you want to make sure that you're not in a room that's too echoey, and that can happen. Generally speaking, if you're in a room with some furniture, that makes it a little bit better because it absorbs some of the sound waves. But what you also want to do is maybe look into getting a microphone. It'll plug right into your computer. They sell them. I have one I bought at Staples. I don't really use it a lot because my kids have taken it all over the house to play with it. They've plugged it into things. But your voice will be more focused. It'll pick it up a little bit better. And there are some directional microphones. So you might want to look into something like that. You could also, I think ours was like $50 or something, which is probably more than I wanted to pay. There are some cheaper ones. There are also some microphones that can clip right onto your clothing. They're called Lavalier Mics, and those are pretty focused on your voice as well. So if you're worried about your voice, that's one of the things. A computer voice through the laptop or through the desktop, it's just the microphones are very, very poor quality, and your phones as well. So that's why we're all our own worst critics. But again, I don't think your voice is terrible, and I think it's, you know, but a microphone certainly would help that.
Yeah,
So
thank you. Thanks.
and by the way, your team here of Eric and Diana are amazing at making you look good and sound good. So they're the ones to ask about. I'm not a microphone expert, but I'll tell you that it might be a good investment.
Thanks. Yeah, they don't have any responsibility for how I look tonight, though.
Do you have some tips for someone who's making a presentation and does a lot of filler words?
What do you mean filler words?
Like and
So here's a great exercise, as I just said. Here's an exercise that I learned as a new reporter, and I did this. And when you're out in the field and you're ad-libbing at a fire, like for instance, so I'm in a classroom, and let me just see if I can describe my classroom here without saying and without ad-libbing it. I'm here at a classroom at the University of St. Joseph. You can see behind me there are some desks. They all have monitors. Right now the room is empty, but normally there would be students sitting here. One of the computers you can see right behind me is facing my direction. Why is it like that? Well, we wanted to punch up the University of St. Joseph picture so that it would be a backdrop over my shoulder. The room, as you can see behind me, is painted a light gray. You can see there are fluorescent lights on the ceiling. You really can't see the carpet, but I can tell you the carpet is a print made of beige, yellow, a little bit of dark gray, and some rust color. And that is what the classroom looks like. So there you go. So I ad-libbed the scene that was behind me, and it's a great exercise. What I would do is if we were doing this as a class, I would tell you all to, in 10 seconds, describe what you see, or talk about the fire in your fireplace or something like that. When you're done speaking, if you're worried about your ums and your ahs and your filler words, transcribe it. Go through it, watch it, and transcribing is fun, said no one ever. I do it all the time. I have to transcribe video, and it's a pain in the neck and other places. But you have to write it down. You can stop the video, write it down, you type it in. Right? Very few people can like listen to it and just shh, you know. It takes rewinding and fast forwarding and writing down. Write every single word, including the ums and the ahs, and then read it to yourself later. You'll be stunned. You'll be stunned at what you said, and you may never say it again. But that's a great way to learn, and I advise reporters, interns whom I work with, and people who want to learn how to be a better public speaker to do that. Transcribe what you say, and you'll be really surprised. And you'll probably be more cognizant of it as you go forward speaking. So I think I did okay when I was describing the room, not doing any ums and ahs. You sort of have to think about it. But once you get conditioned to never say it, you will probably be better at saying it. Caroline Kennedy, who the President Kennedy's daughter, ran for the Senate in New York. And one of the things that derailed her was, well, she didn't really run for the Senate in New York. She explored the run, and she was interviewed by a lot of people, and she kept saying, you know, and people made fun of her. It's on YouTube, and she said, like, 46 times in 20 minutes or something like that. And her crutch was, well, I think, we ought to have housing for immigrants, but they ought to be in the cities and the suburbs, and that's how she spoke for a while. And she's a very intelligent woman, and she's a good public speaker. But this really crushed her chances of becoming the Senate because everybody focused on it, the newspapers, it's on YouTube. And so you want to be a better public speaker, of course. This is what we're doing this for. This is part of your life now because you're going to be making presentations on camera. So you want to get as good as you can. So try that exercise, record it, and then go through it and transcribe it. I think you'll be surprised. Who's next?
I have a question.
Yes. Michelle.
So I'm going to be doing interviews, and I was wondering if you could share what the secrets are to being a great interviewer.
So one of the things about being a great interviewer is that you want to ask questions that haven't been asked before. And I often get interviewed by students it's just a project. Historically, I always get a call from a high school student or a college student who wants to interview me, and they'll ask, well, where'd you go to college? Or where'd you grow up? And if it's a written interview, there's no sense wasting your time asking those questions because they're on my bio. So you want to know a little bit about the person you're interviewing. And when you go in there, interviews last usually a short amount of time. They're 10 minutes, they're 20 minutes, whatever. You don't want to waste your time asking questions that you could easily find out later, unless it is something, for instance, I grew up in Norwood, Massachusetts. It's out there. And so if you ask that first question, you're going to waste some of your time. I would ask, you grew up in Norwood, Massachusetts. What is that town like, and how does it compare to where you live now? Or what are the lessons you learned growing up in Norwood, Massachusetts? Is there a part of you that is still daily? Well, is there something you learned in Massachusetts, in Norwood, that's a part of your daily life today? There are other ways to ask questions. You also want to get people are interviewed so much nowadays. Like, for instance, I'm going to throw some people out there. I mean, all the politicians, Governor Lamont, Senator Blumenthal, these people are on TV all the time being interviewed about COVID and immigration and President Biden, whatever it may be. And so I like to ask them those questions, obviously, because we got to get some news out of them and cover the news of the day. But you also want to ask them some questions that have not been asked before, maybe get their personal feeling on something. So that's the way I think to be a good interview, is to get the questions that are out there. You should always, well, I shouldn't say always, but try to imagine or think about what the answer to the question you're asking will be. And that might help you create some better questions. Because if the answer is not going to be very interesting, then why would you ask the question? And I think sometimes newer interviews, and I'll give you a prime example. Newer interviewers, younger interviewers tend to want to ask more serious questions. And here's my example. When I was a rookie reporter, my very first reporter job in Rockford, Illinois, I was assigned to cover Ronald Reagan's homecoming to his boyhood home. His boyhood home was in Dixon, Illinois, which was outside of Rockford. And he was going to go there to see the home that had just been turned into a museum. And so we were told when we got there by the Secret Service, there'd be no questions of President Reagan. He was a former president, he had just left office. But he was going to go into the house, going to wave to people, talk to friends, and that was going to be it. So I don't know. I was a new reporter. I kind of wanted to make a name for myself. I said, well, I'm going to get an interview with Ronald Reagan. I'm just going to do it. And so I was out there behind the barricades and the whole bit. And I said, let's go around to the backyard, because my guess is he's going to want to go see his childhood backyard. So we went around to the backyard. We left all the other reporters out in front, and we stood up by the garage. And sure enough, he came out. And with the Secret Service agents, and he walked around the yard, he looked around, and he came toward me a little bit as he was making his exit to the back door again. And I asked him a couple of questions. I asked him about Saddam Hussein. I asked him about the Democrats and the budget. I didn't ask one question that meant anything. Looking back on that was my biggest mistake. But I was a 23-year-old reporter, and I didn't want to embarrass myself by asking silly questions like, hey, Mr. President, what's it like to be in your backyard? And you know what? That's the question that really mattered, his emotion. What was it like to be in your boyhood home for the first time in 50 years? I really wish I had asked those questions, but I didn't know. And I was new, and I wanted to be taken as a serious journalist. So sometimes, some of the, I recently interviewed Vice President Kamala Harris, and I had 5 minutes with her. And I could have wasted it on all sorts of issues. And I did ask about a couple of issues, but I also wanted to get her sense of a few things. And one of them was, what's the biggest surprise about being vice president? And she stumbled on it. It's online. She didn't know how to answer that question. It was a simple question, but she really didn't have an answer for it. And she's like, oh. And she said, well, I really like being vice president, but she didn't really answer the question. And I will share this with you. I wanted to ask about how she liked the pizza, but I was told by her people I could not ask that question. There was some controversy with the pizza. It was silly, but I don't know what the controversy was. And I could have defied them and asked it anyway, but here she is. She's been in office for 3 months. And if I defied them and asked a question they hated, I would be on that blacklist of never again will Dennis House get an interview. And I was chosen, the only Connecticut reporter chosen to interview her. And I knew that that would kind of burn the bridge with the White House. So sometimes you got to kind of suck it up a little bit. And I did. And I was like, oh, well, I'm not going to ask about the pizza. So sometimes, you know, when you ask questions that express emotion and something people don't know are really the best ones. And so my Ronald Reagan lesson is a great example of that.
Thank you.
I know it was a long answer, but I'm sorry about that, Michelle.
No, it was great. You could have kept going. Appreciate it.
Anybody else? I know I'm keeping you longer than we're supposed to, so I'm sorry. I know many of you have stuff to do, but any last question, I'll take it. Anyone get a last question? All right.
Dennis,
Well, listen.
I just want to say thank you so much for doing this. This is just fascinating. We need to post this and make sure that all of our students and our young staff and our old staff see this. I did get here a little late, I admit, but I learned so much in the part that I listened to, and you're just so kind to do this, and I love hearing you tell the stories. So thank you.
Well, I want to thank you, President Freeze. You know, I'm a visiting fellow here, and I'm here to help out the university any way I can. I do help out, you know, Professor Carrera now and then, but the timing, it doesn't always work for me. And he's talking about some different things right now that haven't really meshed with what I do. But I'm always here to help and to, if you need me to come and talk about this and journalism and social media and how to be on camera, I love doing it. And, I'm a firm believer that, I didn't have anyone in my family who was in this business. And so I really had to rely on some people to help me years ago, and some older reporters who, this is what you do. And so you learn from everybody your entire life. I still learn from people to this day, and you will learn till you're 99 from people. So if I can help someone, that makes me really happy. So I'm glad I could educate somebody tonight. So that's great. Well, listen, thank you so much for having me here at the USJ, and thanks for all the great questions. This will be online, as President Free mentioned. I think they're also going to put it on weha.com, I think. So it'll be on the USJ website as well. And again, if you have any questions, you can always find me on social media. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Just look for Dennis House TV. I'm still Dennis House 3 on Facebook, and I need to change that. But change it, I'm told I lose my blue check, so I need to figure out that. So you can contact me any of those ways. So thanks, everybody, and have a great night.